party. Mandatory redistribution party. Redistribution party.
Hi there, little guy. Are you here for the mandatory redistribution party? Come right this way. My name's Sean Morley.
Welcome, little one. My name is Jack Lewis Evans.
And we're going to be looking after you here. Do you need anything? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty?
Are you self-actualized?
Are you happy? Jack, they're frowning. Can you do something?
Here's a little balloon.
Jack, that's much too small. Oh, no.
Oh, God. This episode is about happiness. What is it? Why is it? And how?
And why?
You can make other people happy by letting them know about this podcast by sharing it on social media or putting a poster up with a QR code in your town hall. Disclaimer, this will only make people happy if they are the very specific Mando's demographic, people whose homes suffer from damp and are surprisingly scrappy in a fight.
And what if you wanted to make us happy? Well, you could subscribe to our Patreon and patreon.com/mandatory redistribution party and unlock a little collection of extra tidbits. Like recently, when I was introduced to Star Trek, which made Jack happy and made me feel, fine.
Are you saying Star Trek didn't make you happy? I want you to be happy.
Well, no, it made me feel fine, and I like feeling fine.
Sean, this episode is about happiness. I need to hear you happy. The listeners need to hear you happy. They can hear you not smiling.
I am. Well, I am. So I am happy. I'm smiling, and I'm not very expressive.
It's
but
not an authentic smile.
Well, it is. Well, if I don't normally smile, then it's authentic. I feel fine. I'm normal. I'm fine. And
say, do smile, smiley Sean, happy Sean. Come on, say something good.
I'm happy. I'm having a wonderful time.
Happier?
Thank you. I'm happy. I'm having a wonderful time. Thank you so much for having. Thank you. I'm happy. I'm so having. I'm so
be sad, and it'll be your fault, Sean.
I'm happy. I'm happy. I love it here with all my friends. Would you go immortal?
No, fuck that.
Why?
Are you like invulnerable as well? Could you die if you wanted to? Could you take yourself out?
Immortal's immortal, right? Immortal means you're not mortal, cannot have your divine link severed.
But most of your life is going to be spent after the sun swallows the earth, just drifting through space.
So you're worried about being bored?
Yes. I hate boredom, Sean. I hate it. I hate being bored. I hate it.
I think when the sun explodes, it would send you somewhere interesting.
For a bit. Well, I think it would be good when you're like, whoa, I'm flying through space. And space is massive and empty. And then you would get bored. You'd have no one to talk to, nothing to breathe, nothing to eat, nothing to listen to. You would be bored out of your mind. Like, even if you had a Steam Deck, that is going to run out of battery really fast.
Do you really think that space travel and colonization and leaving the solar system won't have been invented by the time the sun swallows the Earth?
100,000%.
Really?
I think before the sun swallows up the Earth, humanity will be wiped out. Long before, because the heat from the sun approaching will fuck us up. And like, even if I think the revolution happens, I am highly skeptical about space travel, because you can't do faster than light, and then all of the problems if you don't have faster than light, it's just an absolute horror show. It's an absolute disaster.
Could quantumly entangle a door to somewhere else?
Yeah, like portals. Like, okay, if we have, so I am more open to being immortal if there's like a kind of Stargate portal thing going on. Yeah.
And your fundamental concern is
boredom.
Need stimulation, need stuff coming in, need new
100%.
media, need release dates in the calendar.
100%. Like, if I haven't got Elden Ring 7 to play, I will, or like Friends, I will go completely west. Have you watched the film The Man from Earth?
No.
Relevant film for this discussion. But this is the premise. They're in this guy's house. He's a history professor in America. And he's leaving. So his friends come round who are other lecturers. You know, you've got like your philosophy person, there's an archaeologist, there's a biologist, whatever. And they're visiting him. They're like, oh, where are you going? And then he says, oh, I have to move on every 10 years because I'm immortal. And if if I stick around, people notice that I don't age.
Yeah, I've heard that. And I've heard that trope in like vampire stuff as well.
He fully commits to the idea, and then they all just like ask questions, but they're all experts in different fields. It's good. It's a good film. I recommend.
Okay, I'll check that out. That sounds fun.
Very, very low budget and not the most amazing acting, but premise carries it. The Man from Earth.
So it sounds like you just need a friend. Or maybe two or three friends.
Yeah, friends. Yeah.
So if you're immortal, but there's three friends, you back in?
Are my friends immortal? First,
I want to see, would you be immortal if there are three other people, but you don't know them? They're just randomly plucked from Earth's population.
No.
Okay.
That's risky.
One of them's your existing friend, and two of them are, again, just randos.
One of them I would end up being an enemy of one of the other immortals. I don't know. But then that's anti-boredom, so maybe I should like that.
Yeah, if you really don't want...
an enemy.
I think, honestly, just hanging out with your friends, you would learn to hate your friends. So having someone you don't like emphasizes how much you like your
like
friends.
a lightning
bolt. Friendship only has meaning because there are other people in the world you like less.
Yes. Okay, yin and yang.
So you really actually want someone you hate to be immortal as well.
Wow, yeah.
Because then you won't be worried about what do I do with my time. You'll be thinking, I hate Gary.
Yeah, Gaz.
Yeah. You're not having this existential, like, what am I? What am I? You're just going, I hate Gary. I want Gary to fuck off.
I don't know, though. I think I would go bonkers. I like the idea of having infinite time, like the kind of Groundhog Day thing where you can just, like, learn stuff. I really do think I would get bored.
But you'd be even more dislocated from humanity in the Groundhog Day.
Oh, Groundhog Days work. Yeah, of course. Because
Yeah.
you can't develop any. Everyone else forgets the day, right? It resets. What do you reckon? What would you do?
First, I was going to say I'd be immortal, no problem. But
No
I hadn't
props.
really thought about. I hadn't really thought about any of the stuff you've brought up. Well, I always thought the classic ones are like, all your friends will die, or your
That's too
family will
short-term.
die.
That's nothing.
I hadn't thought of the timescale.
Yeah, that's gateway. That's
Yeah,
gateway immortal
your
problems.
planet might blow up and you will become bored.
Yes, adrift in space. For like, if you are truly immortal and cannot end your life, so you may live thousands of years on Earth and have all these amazing experiences, but you won't remember them a billion years from now when you're adrift in the infinite darkness of space.
And presumably I still feel pain.
Well, you still feel everything. You just can't die.
So, I mean, when I'm in space, I'm having a shocker. I'm not bored. I'm tormented, right? Because I feel like I'm drowning.
You are basically
And freezing.
in a kind of hell.
Yeah.
You're in horrific pain and mental anguish. And then I think there would probably come a point where that just becomes the default and you remember nothing else. Much like you were saying, you need an enemy in order to appreciate a friend. You perhaps need the absence of pain to truly experience pain. When pain becomes just normal after like a year of being in the exact same pain adrift in space with no one to talk to and a battery empty Steam Deck. That would be really bad, I think. I think that would
And I'm
basically be
probably
hell.
nude as well.
Or if you had clothes, they're not going to last.
After a while, they'll degrade. I was thinking maybe, like, I haven't jumped into space, have I? No one sent me into space. The planet just burnt up around me.
Yes,
And that would take my clothes with me. So I'm nude. I'm probably bloated.
Yeah.
I'm freezing. I feel like I'm drowning. I feel like I'm exploding in a constant state of just about to burst. But as long as Gary's going through the same thing, I don't know.
Every few thousand years, you just catch a glimpse of him.
Yeah.
There he
Glad
is.
he's going through this as well.
Yeah, fuck you,
Idiot.
Gary. It's his fault. Are you happy? What even is happiness? People have been thinking about this stuff since there were people. Fred Flintstone, Wilma Flintstone, mitochondrial Eve. They were all thinking, how do I live a happy life? Do you know, in the 70s, some American architect built a replica of the Flintstones house. Like, it's just a grotesque plastic thing worth millions of dollars. And whoever lives in it now has been trying to sell it for years, but no one wants to buy it because it's the Flintstones house. Anyway, happiness. Discussion on happiness tends to reflect the dominant values of a particular society. So, like, Flintstones thought happiness was powering cars carved out of rock with your bare feet, even though it's made out of rock, and you all use energy to lift it up. Doesn't really make sense. Ancient Greeks debated if the key to happiness was a virtuous life. Feudal Christian societies thought happiness would be about sacrifice. It's about doing what you're told now, and then maybe you'll get to be infinitely happy when you are dead. The individual pursuit of happiness is laid out as a fundamental right. In the American Declaration of Independence in 1776, they said that people, well, they said men, but they said people have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Unless, obviously, you were one of the slaves, the people who wrote that owned. Today, capitalism centers happiness in a quite weird way. Like, while we center the individual's right to pursue happiness, we also live in a machine designed to make us feel like shit. Like, every advert you see on a bus, on your phone, beamed over 5G into your nightmares, is trying to sell you something. Buy egg. But it's also doing more than that. They're trying to make us sad so that they can sell us happiness. They tend to more be about the happiness that comes out of the product, that emotion rather than the product itself. The product is a means to that end, and that end is happiness, and you don't have it. Adverts want to make us feel like we're missing something. They never want us satisfied. Look how happy that family is in Mackey's. Maybe if I eat a Big Mac, it'll make me feel like that. Look how happy this woman is now she's Febrezed her entire house. I too wish to convince my guests I have never stank and will never stink. We're bombarded with what is basically propaganda for depression in order that we can be sold the cure. Bonus, the cure requires money, for which we have to spend most of our lives working to get, often not being happy at all. Don't worry though, if work isn't making you happy, maybe you can be happy by just working harder, which might, but probably won't, make you a billionaire. Maybe you'll become happy if you turn the thing you do for your own joy in your spare time into your work, commodifying something you were just enjoying into yet another product to sell. Are you not happy because you're poor? Well then, despite all those adverts you see on the bus, on your phone, and beamed over 5G into your nightmares, actually you shouldn't worry about material things and should simply breathe in, breathe out. You just need to practice some well-being techniques so you can be content in your poverty. Don't worry about things you can't control. Be grateful for what you have. If you live in California in a 3-bedroom plastic replica of the Flintstones house, don't even try to sell it. Find out who built it. Take a bouquet of flowers to their grave and whisper under your breath, "Thank you." If you were not feeling good, what is something that could make you feel good?
If I wasn't feeling
Yeah,
good,
if you're having like a bad day, what would sort you out?
like I'm grumpy, forlorn,
Yeah, grump mall.
I think a little surprise confection.
Someone just goes, "Hey, Sean," and then you look down. What's that in the hand? It's a Ferrero Rocher.
Oh, that's very fancy,
luxurious.
Yeah. And it's a mixture of things. One, you get a nice little sensation, but also someone has remembered you exist.
Yes,
they've sought you out, and they've given you a little piece of resources.
Yes,
a little piece of the world, a little piece of nice.
They've shared.
They didn't have to.
They didn't have to do that. I think they probably felt good. If I said, "Hey, Sean, do you want this Ferrero Rocher?" and then seeing your little face light up would make me feel good.
When I was a teenager, I remember I was really horrible. And one time I was eating Rolos with my friend by the Humber estuary.
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, I'm on my last Rolo."
Yeah.
And then I looked at them meaningfully, and then I threw my Rolo in the river.
Wow. So I think the benefit that has, if I was the other person, I would have found that really funny. Like, it seems cruel, but that's why it's funny, right?
I think they enjoyed how horrible that was to do more than they would have enjoyed the Rolo.
Exactly.
That's the bet. That's what I'm betting on.
Yeah. That's the gamble. You got to be I say gamble. I think you got to be pretty confident in someone's vibe if you're going to pull a move like that.
I think the biggest jokes always have a 10% chance of ending the relationship straight away.
Yeah. If there's not a little chance of this could go really badly wrong, You're not pushing yourself. And that
I have
doesn't
made-
mean being racist or transphobic. Just
Really,
really wanna
underline that,
clarify
please.
Yeah, highlight, bold.
I've definitely made a few errors in judgment where I think being really angry is funny. Because I'm not given to anger, and I find people who sort of blow up really funny.
It's funny, yeah.
And so I think pretending that suddenly I'm really angry about something is really funny. And I have to say, about 50% of the time, that does not come off. 50% of the time, people are like, Sean's finally blew up.
It's because he snapped. Has anyone got a Ferrero Rocher?
Quick.
It's because character anger is funny, but anger where you think it's real is not. So it's.
You're telling me.
Yeah, right? So it's a tricky one. Yeah, you've really got to communicate that it's joke anger. But then equally commit to the anger. Fucking hard.
I fucked up big time, pretend to be angry. When I was drunk, I was like, I'm going to pretend to be angry about this small mistake this person made. I don't know why. And it was the first time meeting them.
How did that go?
I couldn't, you know how when you make a big mistake, you cannot,
yes, I
it's
do know
very
that.
hard to be like, can I speak to you in private? And I want to, you know, if you do something wrong and you're like, I'm not really like that, I did that as a joke. It doesn't make any sense. You can't do that. So I found myself around this one person, and if you are listening, it is you, being performatively calm.
Wow.
So they're like, you know, this is real me. You know, when you really emphasize, this is the real me. I'm so calm and I'm so nice.
I think that might make you scarier. Like you're mostly calm, but you actually lashed out at this person.
Like a
Like
Bruce
I think
Banner
you should
guy.
have gone full. Oh, Sean's just angry all the time. No, that's terrible advice.
Absolutely not. Because then the joke would have become reality.
Exactly. Yeah. I would like there to be the one person just walking around Earth who thinks you're like rage guy.
I think there are. I think there's people who think I'm a real rage guy.
That's fine. There's loads of people who, whatever you do, however good you try to be and work on yourself, and you think, I am doing the best me I can, someone somewhere thinks you're a fucking dickhead.
I get that as a truism, and it is true, but it is more that situation is more complicated when sometimes you pretend to be a dickhead because you think it might make other people happy. And you have a massive margin of error.
Yeah, true.
Like the truism is true, but if you do that on top, you are asking for trouble.
Yeah, that is your fault.
And it's hard to say, like, are you not now really a dickhead? No, it was a joke. What? A joke that no one enjoyed, that you did of your own back, that you've done again, even though it never works. Where does the performance end here?
So do we think how others perceive us contributes to our happiness? Is that important? Do you care about what other people think about you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, same.
I think if you don't, you've
You're
gone
mad.
a bit mad, psycho. Yeah. You know, when people do those pep talks about like, be confident, it doesn't matter when anyone else thinks of you. I think, steady
Whoa,
on.
hold on. Yeah.
Steady on. Let other people's stares sometimes inform your behaviour. Sometimes, not always.
The way these people are looking at me indicates I perhaps should not be doing a poo on the bus.
Do you know what I mean? It feels like with those pep talks, you're trying to build a generation of litterers.
Yeah. Oh my God. Don't get me started on littering and fly tipping, buddy. Pet peeve.
Chucking crisp packets on the floor, people are like, and they're like, they're just jealous. They wish they could have thrown those hula hoops into the curb.
Why is that guy glaring at me out of his window as I leave 2 couches in the alley behind his house?
Just wishes he had this many couches to spare.
He wished he'd come up with this idea.
We all only really know who we are because of the people sort of tell us. Who am I? I find out by by working out how people treat me.
Like, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you can't exist solely to people please.
We've seen people in the midst of living life that way, and it's grim. You have no ego at the centre.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You become too chameleon.
You can't drift through life. Well, not even drift. Power through life with sheer force of ego. Like, I have self-belief and I don't care what anyone thinks. Hyper individualist, like rebel guy. That to me is like teenager brain. But it's also like the bedrock of loads of like business banter or like sort of Tim Robbins.
If you say there's like a single axis spectrum of like utter selflessness and then absolute selfishness, and you would want to like work out, well, where do we want to put our ego pip along this line, right? My issue is, and maybe both of our issue is that the ego pip where we would say, this is what, if everyone did it, it would make a nice society, is different to which pip position would help you get ahead in a competitive career.
Because capitalism kind of rewards that. And that is why that delusion is so central to the self-help stuff, which we've spoken about before, kind of self-help stuff, of central to the mythology of capitalism is just that sheer force of will, partly so it can attribute wealth to force of will and individual actions rather than inherited or structural, but partly also because that's how, if you wish to succeed in that kind of stuff, you need to have that kind of ruthlessness, which might also involve considering others' perceptions of you with a very specific agenda of like, I need these people to like me and think X, Y, and Z about me, but I don't care about these other people.
Oh, yeah. So your social dynamics become like ladder dynamics, right? Where you're always kissing asses, but you're also just ignoring people that like can't give you anything.
Yeah. So it's instead of people pleasing, where it's someone who wants to for others and so others like them, it's like you manipulating people. So you're still thinking about what others think, but to an objective of the ego. Neither good.
If we're talking about like the self-help decided business brain, right? Yeah. The like multiple YouTube playlists about how to turn yourself into Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
It's like it pathologizes compassion a little bit and also tells you to like reorient your goals. Because for many people, what would make them happy and have a nice life is just to be provided for and have people around them that care about them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that being your end goal of living within a mindset that's becoming like, you know, increasingly prevalent in every area of life and work. You have to be like, hustle to the top. But I don't want to be richer. I don't want to have a nicer vehicle. I don't want my fridge to talk to me. I am happy just being provided for and having friends around me. It feels like there is like a propagandist effort to like reorient my values about what would make my life fulfilling or what would make me happy.
I love the people who are like, the solution to my happiness is to cut out toxic people, quote unquote toxic people, where what they through sheer force of will want to manifest this good stuff. So then they just start fucking off friends and family because they're like, these people have bad energy. They're fucking my vibe.
And the way that like our communities aren't mediated by like proximity and, you know, normal analog kinds of communication. Everything's mediated through technology now. So just fucking people off who said, why are you doing that? Or like fucking people off who said, I think you might be in a multi-level marketing scheme. I think there's a pyramid scheme. And it's like, this is fear and doubt of success talking, and I need to get this person out of my life.
I'm really worried you're spending all this money on NFTs. What is a Pixelmon?
Sounds like you've got a 3x3 pixel drawing of a zombie that you've spent all of your life savings on.
And some of mine. I lent you money.
Yeah, I need that money back. My water bill's just gone up 500%. And you've bought a zombie. This is like Jack and the Beanstalk stuff. And then Jack came back with an NFT and his family starved.
Having friends is good. That is a source of happiness. You would much rather have friends than not have friends.
Yeah. You could give me everything else in the world, but if I'm completely isolated, then what's the point?
Bad. Very bad. I think people struggle in general to make friends in adulthood. I think we have the advantage because we've pursued a similar, you know, we're friends through comedy, through work we do. But like elective, you know, like work that we've chosen to be like, I like this thing. I like making things like this. And then we've made friends through that. But I think a lot of people's workplaces, like I'm not really friends with people in my day job. I'm friendly with them, but they're not my friends. After school or uni or whatever, a lot of pathways to friendship kind of slam shut.
Yeah, I think through comedy and neurology, I've never personally had like a work friend.
Yeah.
Whenever I've had like my day job, I just had people I knew at work. And sometimes I'll see them around the city and I'll say, hello. But I'll never stop for long. No. I never would. But I know people that are like, these are my work friends. And then they'll spend social time with their colleagues. Yeah. And sometimes I will get to witness this. They'll be like, oh, these are your work friends. Yeah. Okay, you're spending time voluntarily with people you've got nothing in common with and you don't seem to like very much, but you work together.
Yeah.
That sounds horrible. School and university are the one times where it's like, here, you're going to meet a massive random catchment of people that have nothing in common at all. And you're just going to spend a lot of time with them. And when you go to a workplace and beyond, everything's sort of homogenized. Nothing's ever quite as diverse as school.
No.
Even then, I've ditched all of my school friends because they were just randos that lived in the local school catchment. And it makes sense that the people I like the most I've met through comedy predominantly because it's completely elective. It's like an expression of my personality.
Yeah.
And I see other people expressing their own personality. And you can also become friends on the back of like admiring each other's work and self-expression.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people get anything equivalent. And I remember a lot of the time when I was much younger, thinking a lot about other people's parents because I would go to my friend's house. And I think, who are our parents' friends? Do your parents have friends? Who are your parents' friends? I remember a while, but I was like a stopped clock. I just asked, I got really curious about this. Taking on my, who are your parents' friends? And they're like, huh?
Wow.
Do your parents have friends? And they were like, mind blown. Who are my parents' friends? And the best I'd get is like, someone from work came round to the house once, I think. The neighbours come round, I think, when my dad was doing DIY.
Yeah. If your parents have got real close friends, then they gain the label auntie or uncle when they are neither your auntie nor your uncle.
We had Auntie Connie and Auntie Gwen, just two different kinds of neighbours. Gwen would come round to my nan's house every Wednesday evening, and they would have one sherry from a special glass. And I wasn't allowed to witness this. I wasn't allowed to go in. Couldn't go in the living room.
Forbidden chalice.
I don't know what was going on.
They were doing a fucking ritual, mate. They were doing something.
No, it was an absolute parish bitch fest, I think. Who in the parish is fucking
scum.
around? Yeah. How do we feel about the new priest? New priest is rushing through the mass. The homilies you could barely work out. We need to get the priest to slow down the mass.
He needs to stop speed running it.
Some of them do, these new priests.
Yeah.
Bish bash bosh.
I need to think about it. I need to think about what's being said.
Well, isn't that the point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're not in Latin anymore. We want to understand this stuff.
I love the old school church thing of, well, they can read the Latin. And then we sit and listen to it.
If you want to know this, just learn Latin. Okay, well, I work in a fucking farm. You can teach me Latin. We've veered really far.
We've veered off, yeah. We've veered off. The guy that's coming into my brain with notions of happiness that we're talking about, and I think we've touched upon a few, which is friends, good. Doing stuff that isn't just like work for the sake of work, but having some joy in what you devote yourself to. I'm thinking Epicurus.
Go on.
He is the man who Karl Marx wrote his thesis on.
Right.
And he's a guy knocking around at ancient Greece, and he decided, I'm going to figure out what like a happy life is. And he sets up his little school, and then everyone's like scandalizing him and saying, do you know what they're doing in Epicurus' school? They're fucking. Right. They're all fucking. They weren't all fucking. Well, I don't think there might have been some fucking. He basically was like, and then, you know, classic ancient Greece where they're like, all right, I'm going to have a think about this thing. Do you want to come and have a think about it with me? And then some other people come and they're like, yes, yeah, okay. Like, what do we reckon? Reckon this. And I think he came up with, he was like, material stuff, not vitally important because it's transient. And if once you get it, then you just want more, you know, like it's like an infinite.
Yeah, the problem with a sandwich is it goes away.
It goes away.
So if all your happiness is based on this sandwich, sorry, your happiness is not going to last.
Yeah, that Subway loyalty card is a bad idea. And then, although I do think my caveat to that is all of the people who are like, oh, material, not so much Epicurus because he's like living in ancient Athens or whatever, but the people who are like, oh, money doesn't bring you happiness, they are normally people who are not poor. Like, oh, you don't need material things. Oh, well, I would like there to not be damp in my house. I would like to go to bed not hungry. Like, the people who are saying that stuff, it's like, yeah, okay, money doesn't matter, but there is like a baseline where survival and, you know, somewhere to live and food, you need some stuff. You can't just live in squalor.
Shelter is material, I'm afraid. I can't think myself warm.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird thing. It's like, oh, actually, all happiness, but you just need to decide not to want the things. It's very much like, you can see how some of that stuff has been co-opted into wellness shit within capitalism,
sure.
right?
And this new minimalism and stuff, and they're always rich.
Yeah, always rich. Like, and then Epicurus set up these things where his basic deal is you need some friends, so he kind of lives in a co-op. He's not that interested in romance. I think he puts friends above romance because, again, he's like, it's tricky business the pursuit of romantic relationships can cause lots of problems. Don't know what was. I think that could be pretty good, but Epicurus not huge on it. Romance skeptic. Sack off work unless it's necessary for. Spend your time doing things you want to do. So like reading and things like that. But then also the work you should do is just like enough to get food or whatever. Don't like work yourself to the bone for someone else. And then there's loads of like Epicurean communities, not necessarily when he was alive, but it's an interesting thing about monasteries, right? There's like 500,000 people living in Epicurean communities, like communes, in like ancient Greece and then into the Roman period. But when Christianity came, they just went and said, no, shutting all these down, but they just turned them into monasteries.
That's really interesting. I've always found monasteries really interesting because it feels like they're just it feels like a commune.
Yeah. All the first monasteries were originally communes.
That's great.
That they just co-opted into this new thing. And it's interesting because Epicurus as well was not interested in religion. He's not like a Richard Dawkins atheism guy, but his idea of happiness is like I guess it's secular. It's not asked about religion. It's not asked about like an afterlife or pleasing gods or living by a set of religiously determined rules. He's just like, these are the things I think make people happy. And it's, having a community, having friends. Yeah, basically a commune, which is interesting given Marx did his doctorate on it. Yeah, right?
yeah, I'm following. I've definitely always been fascinated by any stories I can get of people who made a little breakaway, small society.
Yeah.
But they always seem to go to hell. Because either something vital breaks down and then this sheer equal discourse between different people doesn't work because Jeremy hates Sally now. So how do we do deliberative democracy? Yeah. Or someone ends up getting some power or some hierarchy and then you've got something which feels a bit coercive.
You've got a cult.
There's somewhere between a cult. It could just be,
one of them's got a gun.
One of them has all the carrots, and a gun and an AK. And this big red button, and he just says, you don't want me to press this. Won't say what it does.
Yeah, don't follow where the wire goes.
I decide what's on the menu or I'm pressing this. Remote control.
It's a big red button and it's a wire and it goes all around the compound, all underground, and then it just comes back into the guy's room. And what the red button, if you hit the button, it opens a box and inside the box is a gun.
It allows him to access his own gun, provided he gets to the box first. It airdrops a gun in a random location.
Yeah, spawn gun.
Yeah, if I press this button, there will then be a gun, and then no one will know peace.
If you had a gun in like 300 BC, you would be formidable if you're in an Epicurean community.
One gun, one bullet. One big decision.
Reality TV show.
Yeah, definitely more of a Channel 4 thing.
So had you not encountered Epicurus?
In the briefest of detail.
So the main way that he pops up is he is the guy the Stoics come after, I think. So you'll know.
So I was thinking
them.
about the Stoics.
Yeah.
Okay, right, because I was thinking, so the Stoics, I mean, we already sort of know what they were about given the word has lasted, and it's about like when you get too much brought into like reality and drama and start caring about little things, your emotions can cause you imbalance, so you should kind of retreat a little bit.
The headline difference between the Stoics and Epicurus is like, how do we be happy? And the Stoics go, fuck happy, how do we be virtuous?
Right.
That's the difference between the two. The key Stoic thing of don't stress about stuff you can't control. You can control your thoughts and your actions, and your actions have like a limited impact. Remember that, and that is a way to not allow yourself to be overwhelmed with emotion.
So I've been thinking about that difference between like virtue and happiness.
And
probably explains why Epicurus is not religious. Is because once you start thinking about virtue or a deity or something greater than yourself, you're not worrying about like, how do I be happy? Because if there's a greater virtue than that, something greater than your own happiness, then it becomes about either modifying your behavior or, in the more extreme cases, as with a lot of like religions, modifying what you want.
Yes.
And changing what it is you're like fundamentally going for. Because if there is a god and you need to worship them, then just sort of, growing some potatoes on the farm with your friends, that's not enough anymore.
Yeah.
Where's the tithe? When I think of someone who is completely happy, I cannot help but picture someone who is either incredibly stupid or willfully ignorant. A well-groomed adult smiling blankly like someone from an advert. They are lifting up a product, showing it to their spouse as even-tempered light filters in through their gorgeous house. I hate this person. I think of Steamboat Willie, continuously flexing and unflexing his fingers, rhythmically bouncing at the knees, smiling emptily as he toots the steam whistle of his modest craft. He lives for nothing. He has no ambition. I hate Steamboat Willie. I want to be happy, absolutely 100%. But what happens then? What is waiting for me at the end of the rainbow? Who will stare back at me from the bathroom mirror? A confident Chad, my jaw muscular and swollen from the big grins I do? Or a vacant caricature, another vessel to be piloted by Steamboat Willie's endless voyage to nowhere? Arthur Schopenhauer, a miserable German philosopher, said that happiness is a delusion. Happiness's true purpose is as an imagined state projected into the future. In reality, life is a pendulum vacillating unevenly between sadness and boredom. And these forces are what drive us forward, the carrot and stick of doing anything ever. The urge to improve our lot and make things better is motivated by this false belief of future satisfaction, but it is dissatisfaction that really fuels our will to live. Schopenhauer is labelled a pessimist, and yeah, well, absolutely, seems like a horrible guy to know. But I would sooner live within this way of life than the alternative. Complete bliss, absolute fulfillment, wandering open-mouthed, wide-eyed, filtering a cacophony of bright colours through my vast dilated pupils. Finally, I am satisfied. Finally, I am complete. I lay down and wait for death.
A few episodes back now, I did that explainer on Robert Nozick, you know, the Wilt Chamberlain argument. So Nozick's got another idea, which is a superior idea, even though he's like a big apologist for Reagan and Thatcher economics. His basic point is that, okay, so if you're saying the goal of life is happiness, then that is like almost like a hedonistic philosophy, depending on how you define happiness. Like, is happiness just like the sensation of pleasure? And he says, well, if you built, I think he calls it the experience machine, but think of it as like VR, some metaverse matrix thing. You build a machine, and in it, you can experience anything you can possibly imagine that will make you happy. And within the machine, it is experienced as real. So it's like being properly plugged into the matrix. And he is like, well, if the point of life is happiness, then you could just go in that machine, live out your life impacting no one else. I mean, just, putting aside all the concepts of like, where is the fuel come from? Where was the chips in the VR headset mined? Put all that aside in this hypothetical and basically say, you are just experiencing happiness and pleasure. Like, you're dating Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson. You have a mech. You have like a Richie Rich house, whatever people want. But he's basically kind of saying, oh, is that good? And I think kind of expecting people to go, well, no, because you need to, it isn't true happiness. It's just like, you have to have some real impact on other people. But then some of the critiques of that are like mega galaxy brain, because he's kind of saying you need to have impacts on others to live a truly good and happy life, right? So he's saying it can't just be this like VR experience in Zuckerberg's metaverse or the Matrix. You have to have real effects on. But that's like almost like a status quo bias, because then a whole other bunch of philosophers are going to say, but how do you know this is real?
Oh, well, you go back to
You know,
Brain
you
in the
just
Vat
double.
stuff.
You go back to Brain in the Vat, which is a boring conversation that we all did when we were 14.
We've all seen The
But
Matrix.
We've
We're
all seen
done.
The Matrix. We get it, right?
Yeah.
But like if you kind of just ignore that like, oh, is everything a simulation thing? I think it's an interesting thought experiment. I don't know. What do you think of that?
When I was introduced to this idea, I saw it as way more hedonistic because it would say you are made happy in every way that someone can. It's like, what if you ramped up happiness to 11, which means all the different flavors of happiness are being wrapped up at the top. So not only are you married and you have a fulfilling job and you feel virtuous and people are kind with you, you're also constantly like feeling the sensation of sugar and umami, and you're also you're coming constantly. You're just constantly having orgasms, right? Because that's one of the nice pleasure. You've got to be having all of them constantly. Someone's always giving you a back rub. You can, whenever you want, you can feel fresh produce and go, that feels firm, because that's the thing that makes you happy, right?
But you're in the Matrix. It does. You know what? Firm fruit and veg. Yeah, I'm in.
Finding one that's just right,
Yeah. But you don't want to be the fruit.
That would be good.
You don't want to be the fruit. Coming back to perceptions, you don't want to be the fruit rummager.
It feels good. It makes you feel proper. It's one of the few times where I, as someone with no DIY or practical skills, can touch an object and go, that's good. That's
I'll tell you
sturdy.
what it is. I think it
That'll
brings...
hold.
What are you going to use it for? I think it brings to mind the ancient sensation of harvesting something yourself. I think that's why it gives you a little chemical hit.
Some genetic memory from Mesopotamia.
Yeah. Well, then that's the other thing, right? You go, oh well, is happiness the chemical compounds of like whatever serotonin and dopamine, and machine aside. So let's bring in a different hypothetical machine, which isn't even a machine. It's a big syringe full of happy juice. And regardless of sensation, so you're not in VR anymore, you are just in a thing that gives you the chemical compounds that make you feel pleasure and contentment, however you're defining happiness. You feel that. So you feel great. But what's happening in front of you is, I don't know, someone's driving a Toyota Hilux over your puppy or something. Like some fucked up.
Yeah.
Like
You're
horrific.
describing the experience of taking heroin while watching the news.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. And like, are you happy then? My instinct is that you're not, but your actual experience of happiness would be chemically the same as if you were actually experiencing happiness. Although I guess I think in this, can we only mean pleasure by that?
Right, we want to be drawing a distinction between different kinds of... I think once you start doing that...
Yeah, we're going in the weeds. No one wants to hear that.
Well, not only that, but you make one of these really janky theories where you have to like create this
Category
hierarchy of
one.
different kinds of
Yeah,
happiness,
yeah.
and then you'll like define this kind of happiness. We're like, these are the bad kinds of happiness, and eventually it'll become all the things that poor people like to do, like wearing trackies or having a pint of Carlin or shouting at the TV. They're like, these are the bad happinesses, don't do these anymore. Here's the good happiness.
Opera.
It's involved checking your bank balance, living in a terraced house in North London. These are the good happinesses. You should strive for that. Although, actually, what am I talking about? That's happened. That's reality. That's the life we live in. There's the good pleasurable things and the bad pleasurable things.
I tell you what, though, isn't that just the thing of the transfer from happiness to virtue we were talking about earlier, though? Like, as soon as you start digging down and going, what's happiness? People end up, for some reason, talking about the virtuous life.
This is exactly how it works. Right? You
Right.
start off going, okay, happiness is such an obvious route for me to think about what makes you happy. And you come at the end, like you do a massive research project, it's like sitting on your arse eating chocolate all day. I'm like, that can't be right. That can't be right. But there must be another kind of thing to do. And then, you go, okay, it's this other thing. It's actually about praying, or it's about being quiet, or it's about saying thank you to the bus driver. And if you see someone eating chocolate, they're like, you're dreadful. Everything's wrong. You should go to prison.
Is this a flat screen TV?
Yeah, you should
don't
go
deserve
to.
this.
You should be trawling eBay for hours to find
The
a
CRT.
cathode ray.
Yeah. Even though they're more expensive now because of
They're
nerds.
collector's items.
Yeah. I'll tell you what my retort to Nozick is. He's like, if you were just doing this VR thing, is that true happiness? Listen, buddy, I have installed and played Miyazaki's Elden Ring. I love my friends. I love working on stuff and creating and having a thing where, or helping people. I love these things, but I also fucking love a real good computer game where I am a tarnished seeking the Elden Ring.
Elden Ring.
Right? And do you know what? And it's not like, oh, I feel happy when I'm playing it, and then afterwards I feel really guilty and have this big thing of self-loathing. And because technically all I'm doing, again, it's the Nozick's thing, is, well, I'm not in a hospital bed in this VR thing, but I am just like sat. You know, I'm not plugged into the Matrix, but I am sat still vacantly in front of a screen. You know, like if you just objectively looked at me, you'd be like, that guy is not having a good time. But do you know what? I fucking am.
That guy's plugged into the happiness machine.
But doesn't that flip back to
like
the same
a piece
thing?
of meat.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk.
but doesn't it just come back to like certain sources of pleasure are like virtuous and others aren't? In the, say, like literature, like spending a day reading quality literature. I think even Epicurus himself, because video games doesn't exist, uses that as an example of like, that is a thing you should be doing, is like enjoying some literature or something. But it's fucking... What about a game? You know, like a really good book has the same effect as a game, where in a game you are playing this character and exploring a world and like having that character's experiences in the game. But it's the same thing as a really good book. You're experiencing the experiences of the character. It's like I mean, you're not controlling the character. The author's controlling the character much more totally than in a game. But I think it's a really similar experience. You know, like when you get an absolutely slapping video game and an absolutely slapping novel, the real difference in how you feel and during and after is just that instead of having a controller in your hand, you've got the book in your hand. For me, I don't know.
And even within books, I remember when trying to, work out what my reading tastes were when I was younger, I had this idea of like, here's what you ought to read. You've got to read all these Penguin classics. And I would force myself through a lot and being like, well, I want to be someone who reads, so I should read this. I wasn't having fun. And I honestly think I could have just not done a lot of those. I didn't enjoy a lot of them. I just enjoy reading contemporary sci-fi and stuff like that now. I think that's completely fine. We hierarchy pleasure all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's like power and prestige hierarchies just end up influencing these things. Do you know, the thing I'm reminded of by this conversation, and it's a bit of a left field turn, is that I remember when I was first being told what communism and capitalism were as a child, and you get a both sidesism. You go like, here's what was here, and here's what was here.
Pros and cons.
Yeah. And I remember one of the fundamental things was that in capitalism, or especially like America, you could go and do anything you want. Under, if you have the resources, right, you could win the lottery, you could become a rock star, whatever. And in communism, you can't starve. It's very hard to not be able to pay the rent because you're like in many ways fundamentally provided for by the state, but you can't go off and just do whatever. That's the central choice that differentiates these two systems. And within that, you get these visions of like 1984-ish, everyone in the same jumpsuits, everyone in the same buildings, everyone doing the same thing, where there's an idea that some central authority has decided on some central conception of what is good, what the virtues are, and then they are imposed below.
Yes.
And within freedom-loving Western liberal countries, people can have any conception of happiness they want, and then they can go off and try and often fail to realize them. But as we're talking about, within those, there is a conception of happiness that has been decided from above, and a conception of virtues that have been decided from above that is imposed, often quite punitively, on people below. It feels like one of the things that is objected to by like critiques of communalized or even socialist or even anarchist or even, just non-free market systems. There's nothing like fundamentally incompatible with the idea of having a communist state where someone's saying, I don't like my job. It makes me unhappy. Could I do a different job? And someone going, yeah, okay, I don't think you'll do a good job if you're miserable. Do this other thing. But within that, you assume people aren't going to be taking the piss. Going like, can I be? I really don't like my job as a publisher. Can I be a rock star, please? That seems to make me happy. And you think, well, no, you're taking the piss. No, we don't need those.
Yeah,
we can't have everyone being a rock star. And within that, it's implicit that it's asking people, you can have whatever you want, but don't want something that's like really selfish. Don't want something that just only benefits you. You should want things within a system that is thinking about other people rather than wanting to be a rock star, wanting to be a CEO, wanting to be like a world famous dolphin breeder. Both of those are imposing virtues and imposing what you should think happiness is. but one of them is telling you to value other people. And one of them saying, don't worry about it. Do we like...
And then we're right back to the start of like, should you think about other people? How do other people affect your happiness?
But and again, it's not like, I don't know.
It's really hard, isn't it? Well, we're not going to come up with an answer on a fucking episode of Mandatory Redistribution Party because the greatest philosophers of history have not got a concrete answer to this. And we haven't even opened the nihilism door where you can just go, well, actually, nothing means fucking anything.
Yeah, go down the solipsism trench.
Yeah. Which it probably does nothing, nothing means anything, but you construct your own meaning. And as long as you're aware that you're constructing your own meaning, there's the stories we tell ourselves about our lives can make us feel better or worse about them. And to an extent, we have control over that. But at the same time, you can't retreat into a pure, a kind of stoicism that is just like contentment with things being shit. You know that thing of like, there's a limit to what you can change, and there's what you have control over, which is your thoughts and actions, and there's things in the world that you can't control, so why stress about them? That'll just make you depressed, because if you believe you can change them, you will just become depressed that you can't, which I think is a thing that many people on the left, that's a sensation people have had. But at the same time, that spin on stoicism can just lead to total inaction, because it's basically just saying contentment with the world as it is. You need to think, no, actually, collectively, because stoicism it's an individualist thing, isn't it, of going like, well, what about you only have control over your thoughts and actions, but the greatest things achieved ever are achieved collectively with others,
and you create meaning yourself, right?
You create meaning, you create your own meaning. Yeah,
I feel like we're heading into sort of like existentialism where because everything fundamentally means nothing. You create meaning for yourself. I remember first reading Sartre's Being and Nothingness, being like, what is this? What is going on here? And it's like, from a position of like nothing, you need to create what you think you are and make that have meaning. And I was like, what's the limits on that? And if there's a passage where it says, you could will that you're a chaffinch, but, he says, that would be an act of bad faith. And I remember that from like 10 years ago. I'm like, I'm going to be a chaffinch. Sartre's writing animals.
Yeah, finch life.
But this idea that obviously nothing has meaning, right? Because they wouldn't be good or bad, or they wouldn't be pretty or smelly or salty if everyone was dead, right? They're subjective. Intersubjectivity is when a lot of people hold the same basic opinion, but it's still subjective. And so things like happiness and virtue, a lot of overlap, right? We all think murdering's a bit of a bad vibe, but they're still meanings we've imposed on the world. And so by having an idea of what you would like the world to be like, while still mediating it against the absurdity of outside realities, you can still create going to use a vague word here, fulfilling. You can create a fulfilling life.
Yes.
And I think fulfillment comes from when you have a personal idea of happiness and an idea of virtues, and you've managed to realize it some of the way through compromising with the absurdity of the outside world.
Do you know the fucked quote that stays with me? The context of it, but it's another French guy. Is it? I never know because I've only ever read it. Is it Camus or Camus?
Camus.
What's that S doing at the end of that?
French,
yeah.
Which Albert, isn't it? You got two of those. You got two silent. Albert Camus.
Which is imagine Sisyphus happy.
What's wrong with that? Sounds great.
I know.
Is that supposed to cause me some kind of internal issue? That sounds wonderful. That sounds like a nice GIF.
It's like Sisyphus is the guy, I'm sure, not to patronise this, Sisyphus is the guy pushing the rock. Does he infinitely push the rock, or does he get the rock to top and then the rock rolls back down and then he pushes it back up? Or is he?
I don't know when it rolls down or whether he fails to push it to the very apex and it goes a little bit over. I don't know.
I can't remember if that's the point he's making, but I just find it funny. Imagine Sisyphus happy, because it's like they use that as an example of like, this guy's just it's like his hell. It's like his doom that he's just pushing this rock and he can never actually achieve it. But then it's like what Sisyphus needs to do is choose to give that meaning, and then he's sorted.
Well, all Sisyphus needs is, a sickly child who says, every day I look out the window and see you pushing the rock and it really cheers me up. And Sisyphus is like, I have the perfect life.
Yeah. And sometimes as well, you got to remember in your life that, sometimes you achieve stuff and then you forget about not having it, and then you just start looking at this thing and you become discontent. Sisyphus may have thought at one point, I really wish I could have a rock. And he's forgotten.
And then the monkey's finger curled up. I'll give you a rock, all right.
Mandatory Redistribution Party was created and produced by Sean Morley and Jack Lewis Evans. Our title theme was created by Ella Jean, with additional music from Sean Morley and Jack Lewis Evans. Thank you so much for listening, and if you found some happiness in this chunk of Mando's content, please help others experience it too by sharing on social media. You can also support our work at patreon.com/Mandatory Redistribution Party, where we have additional content. Thank you very much for all of your support. We do greatly appreciate it. And we're doing some live Mando shows in April and May in Manchester, Sheffield and London, so follow us on Twitter at Mando Party, where we'll be confirming those dates and announcing more soon. Exciting!
La, 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 la.